Thank you.
He's definitely going to talk about Medicare for all.
Thank you.
I love
Very on message, which I always appreciate about Bernie.
I love the Bernie lectern man spread that he does.
It is an honor. It is an honor to be with you tonight because we're laying the groundwork for Kamala Harris to become our next president. And let me tell you why that is so important.
Tell us.
I want you all to remember where we were 3.5 years ago. We were in the midst of the worst public health crisis in 100 years and the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. 3,000 Americans were dying every day.
Yep.
And our hospitals were overwhelmed with COVID patients. All across the country, businesses were shutting down. Unemployment was soaring. Workers were losing their health insurance. Schools were closing. State and city budgets were running out of money. People were being evicted from their homes. Children in America were going hungry. That was the reality the Biden-Harris administration faced as they entered the Oval Office.
Remember those long lines at food banks?
Suffering,
Yeah, I mean,
a nation frightened,
refrigerated trucks filled with body bags.
looking to their government for support. And within 2 months of taking office, our government did respond. We passed the American Rescue Plan, which provided $1,400 for every man, woman, and child in the working class. We extended and expanded benefits for the unemployed. We provided emergency assistance for small businesses to stay open. We guaranteed health care coverage to tens of millions of Americans through one of the largest expansions of Medicaid in history. We provided rent relief and mortgage assistance, which prevented tenants and homeowners from being evicted. We established emergency food programs for hungry children and the elderly and protected the pensions of millions of union workers and retirees from being slashed by up to 65%. Oh, and by the way, we cut childhood poverty by over 40% through an expanded child tax credit. Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, Vice President Harris. Thank you, Democratic Congress. Now, I say all of this not to relive that difficult moment, but to make one simple point. When the political will is there, government can effectively deliver for the people of our country. And now we need to summon that will again, because too many of our fellow Americans are struggling every day to just get by, to put food on the table, to pay the rent, and to get the health care they need. Brothers and sisters, bottom line, we need an economy that works for all of us, not just the billionaire class. My fellow Americans, when 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck, the top 1% have never, ever had it so good. And these oligarchs tell us we shouldn't tax the rich. The oligarchs tell us we shouldn't take on price gouging. We shouldn't expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and vision. And we shouldn't increase Social Security benefits for struggling seniors. Well, I've got some bad news for them. That is precisely what we are going to do. And we're going to win this struggle because this is precisely what the American people want from their government. And my friends, at the very top of that to-do list is the need to get big money out of our political process.
Where's
wow, that's like
Cenk?
That's the first time I've heard that at the convention, I think.
The convention, okay, but not from Bernie.
No, not from Bernie, but
Cenk swears that Bernie never talks about corruption. He talks about corruption all the time.
What do you mean he never talks about corruption?
I wish Cenk was here.
Oh, there's something about primary elections. I was wondering if he'd do a classic Bernie or if it'd be tamped down. This is classic Bernie.
Overturn the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision.
Where is Cenk? Okay.
I think he's close by. I'll get him.
I need him to listen to this. That's his top criticism of Bernie. He doesn't talk about corruption. He never mentions corruption. He talks about corruption all the time.
Yeah, it's been a big focus.
We need to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a human right, not a privilege.
Okay, I've seen some of these delegates clap, but I wasn't sure they would.
Finally, I mean, they seem pretty disinterested.
To raise the minimum wage to a living wage.
This is highly detailed and specific.
We need
I like
to
it.
pass the PRO Act so that workers can organize in unions and gain the decent pay and benefits they deserve. We need to strengthen public education, raise teachers' salaries, and make sure that every American, regardless of income, receives the higher education he or she needs.
If he had been the nominee in 2016 and won, he could be ending his second term with this level of energy.
Big Pharma.
He would have had 8 years, this much energy. He would have still been effective in the closing days.
In half, so that we no longer pay any more than other countries. Joe and Kamala made sure that no senior in America pays over $35 a month for insulin. We need to make sure that reality is true for every American. I look forward to working with Kamala and Tim to pass this agenda. And let us be very clear. This is not a radical agenda.
It's not. It really isn't.
Popular.
But let me tell you
a lot of
what
it's the
a
Walls
radical
state-level
agenda is. And that is Trump's Project 2025.
Don't do it.
At a time of massive massive income and wealth inequality, giving more tax breaks to billionaires is radical. Putting forth budgets to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid is radical. Letting polluters destroy our planet is radical. And my friends, we won't let that happen. Fellow Americans, in the last
Cowgirl caucus. They're on his side. I like it.
I love those hats.
Together,
I know. We could wear those hats.
Yeah.
We have accomplished more than any government since FDR.
It's really sad if that's true.
But much, much more
jaded, some stuff
remains to be done. We must summon the courage to stand up to wealth and power and deliver justice for people at home and abroad. Abroad, we must end this horrific war in Gaza.
Yes, more. Give me more.
We got to get you one of those hats because you got the energy.
The hostages and demand an immediate ceasefire.
Yes.
He delivered with fire too. He didn't just say it; he said it.
Give me more, Bernie. Give me more.
It is a massive indictment of the American people that he is not more popular than he is.
I agree. Not the American people, our political system.
We must take on Big Pharma, Big Oil.
No, go back to Gaza. Give me more.
Big Tech, and all the other corporate monopolists whose greed is denying progress for working people.
This is a very Bernie Sanders speech. He did not create a version of it for them. He just did what he does.
Kamala Harris as our president, and let us go forward to create the nation we know we can become. Thank you all very much.
And this is one of the situations where I really wish that I could feel. I mean, I see people standing up, so that's good. I would love to see the reaction because I want to know.
It did.
I don't know. We honestly can't tell. Maybe the viewers can let us know.
It's important to understand, guys, that the video feed, for whatever reason, doesn't allow you to hear how the audience is reacting.
Yeah.
So they might be applauding, but we just don't hear it.
Yeah.
But I was paying close attention to like the camera shots of the crowd, and they didn't seem as excited.
There was clapping, but I will say in some of the speeches last night, I could feel it.
Yeah.
Like for AOC, I could feel it.
Yeah.
For Hillary Clinton, I could feel it, and I didn't quite feel it, but like what? Like I would love to talk to people in the crowd. What did he say that you disagree with? Is there anything?
I think that.
Or should we just not be saying it? Like maybe you think it, you want it, but we shouldn't say it. We shouldn't strive for it.
I'm gonna concede that this is. I'm really hoping I'm wrong, okay? And this is just my gut feeling. The reason why I felt pretty deep sadness watching that speech, even though Bernie was saying all the right things, is watching him like really solidified in my mind that it's the end of an era, really.
Not just for Joe Biden, for him as well.
No, it's the end of that feel the burn era. And it's not just about Bernie, it's about what that represented. And like the hope that came along with it, that there was a possibility we're moving toward the vision that Bernie just outlined there. And what I mean is, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman gone.
Yeah.
They were voted out. I felt that AOC's speech yesterday was, to say it was disappointing, I don't think really emphasizes enough how much I hated her speech. Because
I disagree, but I understand what you're saying.
She lied about Kamala Harris working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire. She lied about Kamala Harris. Like, she made Kamala Harris seem like she's like Kamala Harris is the Teamsters president. And
well, Sean Fain had a lot of positive things to say about her.
Sure.
Okay. I mean,
The whole point of AOC and politicians like her, the reason why so many young people, so many progressive voters, so many people canvassed for her, donated to her, fought for her, wasn't so she could provide cover for the flaws of the corporate Democratic wing of the party, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. It was so that she could fight them and push them to the economic issues and economic policies that we want. And instead, she's kind of just coalesced.
Look, I think it's complicated. I think I don't fully disagree with what you're saying. I think, again, a lot of what we have to do with AOC is we are live reading tea leaves in what she's saying and what she's doing to what the political strategy is. I think the optimistic or maybe really like generous read would be she thinks she can be a person that works with Harris. I think that she sees in Harris a better ally for these policies than Joe Biden. I think that she chose Tim Walz, a guy who has done a lot of this stuff already, which is a good sign. The policies she's put forward so far, at least announced, are a good sign. They're better than Joe Biden.
Let me just pause. Look, you made a really good point, and I really want to focus on that for a second before you move on. The Tim Walz pick for me was huge.
Yeah.
Because there, by the way, I want to be clear, there are some social issues where I can nitpick and I didn't like, but put that aside because what matters is what he represents on economic issues.
Yeah.
And to me, Kamala Harris picking him communicated, it was a nod to those economic issues.
Yeah.
Right? So that's very real and I give her credit for that. So that was the best point you've made so far that counters my negativity. So thank you for making it and continue.
Well, and I'll just a little bit more. I don't fully disagree, even though, as I've said on TDR this morning, I rewatched the speech, able to hear the energy. I digested it without breaking it up by commenting and all that. And I did like it more. But that said, my ideal AOC speech would have been her energy, passion, delivery, and more of the Bernie Sanders policies that he listed. It wasn't that sort of speech. That's not what she was going for. I know a lot of people online are saying it's reminiscent of like an Obama 2004 thing. And again, I think that that's still going a little bit far. That's not a criticism of AOC. Nobody's gonna give a speech like that. It's just not gonna happen. But his big 2004 speech was not a Bernie Sanders laundry list of issues. It wasn't. It was an aspirational view of what we can accomplish by coming together, absent a lot of policy specifics.
You got that from her speech yesterday? Really?
I think something like that. I think that it was part critique of Donald Trump. It was part critique of the way that the right looks down on working Americans. I think it was an attempt to bring together different groups in society and tell them that there is something that she sees in Harris that they can get behind. I think that was the goals. Bernie Sanders had a very different list of goals, and I like that sort of speech better. Obviously, the room didn't like it better. We'll see what the internet and the wider population thinks.
Yeah, look, my biggest issue with AOC wasn't that she failed to give a Bernie-like speech. Okay, I want to be clear about that. My biggest issue with her is that she lied. That she lied about Kamala. She didn't have to say a damn word about Gaza. Okay, like if you're gonna lie, if you want to bring up Gaza and you're gonna lie about it, then just don't bring up Gaza. Because if you're gonna lie to us and tell us that she's working tirelessly. First of all, let's just be clear. Kamala Harris is the VP. So Kamala Harris can't, as the vice president, secure a ceasefire deal. That's not her role. And we all know what the role of the VP is. So don't lie to us and tell us that she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire deal.
What if it's more a lot of exaggeration than a lie? Yeah. Well, look, I think there's certainly, when it comes to a VP, entering the race at the last minute and running, there's a lot of that going around. Donald Trump is simply saying everything that he said about Joe Biden about her as if she's been in charge of all domestic and foreign policy for the last 3.5 years. And the Democrats are all stressing, including Joe Biden last night, stressing how integral she was to every positive thing that happened in the last 3.5 years. So there's definitely a lot going around. And I do think it is fair for us to expect more honesty out of someone like an AOC than like a Joe Biden. I will grant you that.
I don't want her to lie to me about especially that issue. Now look, back in 2019, I didn't know this until yesterday. So I'm glad I learned about it. But Kamala Harris did walk the picket line with workers, right? So, when it comes to AOC's statements in regard to Kamala Harris being pro-labor, one can make an argument, right? So a lot of progressives and leftists were criticizing AOC's take on that. And I'm willing to let that slide. But what I'm not willing to let slide is the complete lie that Kamala Harris is working around the clock tirelessly to secure a ceasefire deal for Gaza. That was beyond insulting, and I did not appreciate it.
Sure, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know what Harris is doing behind the scenes. I don't know. I know that she was at least a little bit involved in the 6-party lateral hostage negotiation. So there is reason to believe that she could be involved in some sort of negotiations. I don't know to what extent. I don't know if tirelessly is a fair word to apply to it. If I had to put my money, I would say no. It's a convention speech. People exaggerate. So I wouldn't put it in the same classification of lies as a lot of lies that we hear. But in the broader category of not completely honest, I will grant you that.
Yeah.
I will also say, there is a school of, like, they advise teachers when you have a student that's acting out, for instance, don't say, little Jimmy, you never pay attention, because kids are looking for a role to fill, even a negative role. You give them an identity and they will live down to that identity. If you instead say, in the brief moment when little Johnny is paying attention, you know what, little Johnny, I admire how much you're paying attention. That's a new role, and they live up to that role. What if AOC is trying to set out a role for Harris? Because if the expectation becomes that she is gonna deliver, like, nobody had much hopes that Joe Biden was gonna deliver. And so maybe he didn't feel like he had to because nobody thought he was going to. If instead we create this role wherein Harris is gonna be better, maybe she makes that a bigger part.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I'm being overly generous. Obviously, I'm biased when it comes to AOC. But
in our political system, in every political system, politicians are motivated by incentives and disincentives. It's that simple. And if you don't have an organized group that is willing to use its leverage to hold these politicians, including AOC, accountable for not serving them after they fought to get her elected, then she's going to respond to other incentives. And right now, the other incentives are the establishment Democratic Party kind of like sucking her in, right? And there's an incentive to go along with that for her own political career, for her possibilities in influencing the party in some way in the future, even though, honestly, so far, when push comes to shove, and AOC tries to exert any influence, any of her views on the party, they're pretty freaking dismissive of her. It happens over and over again. And look, I'm never gonna forget this. I'll never forget this. I wonder if you remember it. It was some number of years ago. Remember, we're already giving close to $4 billion to Israel every year in military aid. Every year.
Have for decades.
Okay. I believe Congress, the House of Representatives, was voting on some military thing. Like, it had to do with the US military, right? And they just decided, you know what, why don't we just add an extra provision and give Israel an extra bill? Why not?
Yeah. And I don't know if I remember that specific one, only because I assume that has happened many times.
Okay. But what made that story so interesting is that AOC was gonna vote no. And then she had a stern talking to by Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi. And she started, AOC cried about it, like literally tears in her eyes. And instead of voting no, she voted present. That was such a,
I don't remember the specifics. That sounds familiar though.
I obviously don't remember the specifics either in regard to like what the original bill was that they tacked on that $1 billion, in additional military aid to Israel. And by the way, this wasn't when they were in the middle of a war or anything like that. It was just like, let's just do a little favor for Israel out of nowhere, like for no freaking reason. Additional $1 billion, even though we're giving them close to $4 billion every year. Anyway, that really bothered me. But Cenk and I talk about this, off air time to time. And I think it's important for me to try to remember this. We like to project who we are onto other people. And look, obviously I'm not in Congress and I don't know for sure how I would act if I were in Congress. But you guys see how I act on the show. And when I believe something and when I know something, I am going to communicate it on the show, even if I know that I'm gonna get a lot of hate and backlash from our audience, because I feel that living by my principles and doing what I feel is the right thing and being as honest as possible is valuable.
Yeah.
But I probably shouldn't project that onto other people. And I'm sure the pressure in Congress is unbearable for someone who comes in and wants to change things. But I am not buying for a second that all of a sudden AOC is just like, she's like trying to outmaneuver them, and she's, thinking strategically about how she can influence them.
I would be more willing to have a conversation about if that's what she's doing, whether it would work. I don't find it hard to believe that could be what she's doing. I don't know. There's obviously a lot we don't know. I don't know AOC. I don't talk to AOC. I see what she does. I see how she votes, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't know. What I will say, maybe this will make you a little bit more optimistic. Obviously, some of the news coming out of Gaza there's no reason to make you optimistic. And there was reporting earlier today that Donald Trump might have called up Netanyahu to tell him not to sign a ceasefire until after the election because it would help Harris. If that is true, that needs to be a much bigger story, because that's effectively treason at that point.
Hold on, you want to know who has leverage? Is it the current sitting president, or is it the guy who's not in office right now?
Well, from the point of view of Netanyahu, a guy that he could potentially help get into office that would then give him far more, that's potentially appealing.
So Biden, I would maybe use my leverage right now.
I didn't finish the story.
Okay,
what I'm saying is,
sorry.
Okay, I am now being assaulted live.
Do that on purpose. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, what I was going to say is, look, there are multiple potential incentives in these speeches to speak about Gaza. But I have noticed, Joe Biden talked about it, said we have to have a ceasefire. AOC talked about it, we have to have a ceasefire. Bernie Sanders, and I'm sure others, I didn't watch all the speeches, have said it. That is a lot of, look, you could just do that because there's protests and because a lot of voters care about it. You could just do that. If there's really nothing behind the scenes that is giving them reason to believe that that's something that's gonna happen soon, then that is a risky game to play. Or on the other hand, they might know that something is potentially coming, so it's a little bit safer to make it a big focus and put all of that potential pressure and expectation on Kamala Harris. If Kamala Harris is just coming in with no better plan or no more influence or no more information than Joe Biden has had, then this could be a strategic flaw of a great magnitude. Or maybe they know that something is coming and this is a preview of that. I don't know.
All I'm saying is, don't lie to us. I don't like it. That is a low bar. That's all I'm saying.
I hear what you are saying.
Low bar. You get what I'm saying? So that I found to be, because look, that one issue, I get it. If there are people in the audience who don't care, I get it. I care deeply about that issue. Okay. It has to do with ancestral reasons of what my ancestors went through. I've never shared this on the show. I know I've shared it on social media once. And it's because I don't want people to think that I have like some ridiculous bias that's informing, how I feel about what's currently going on in Gaza. It's just brutal, it's immoral, it's wrong, and innocent people are getting killed. And I just want it to stop. That's it. But, the Armenian genocide happens, and Armenians were forced on a death march to Syria. And so after the genocide, a lot of Armenians ended up settling in various Arab countries, okay? And on my mom's side, maternal grandmother was born in Haifa. She was born in Haifa in 1937. And growing up, I would hear stories. Like my grandma unfortunately died when I was 2 weeks old. So I never got to have those conversations.
I did not know that
firsthand. But she would have the conversations with my mom, and me and my mom, growing up, we would have conversations about the Palestinian people and what they were like and how welcoming and loving and kind they were, how they didn't treat Armenians who settled, at that time, it was in Israel. I mean, it's 1937 when my grandmother was born, but how they didn't treat Armenians like the others. Even though Armenia was the first Christian nation. So you have Christians coming into an area where you have, Arabs, some of whom are Christians themselves, but the majority of whom are Muslims. And they didn't see Armenian Christians as less than. They didn't see them as a threat. They welcomed them, they protected them. And I feel so much shame that Palestinians did that for my family. And I live in a country that has a government that's brutalizing them, that's aiding and abetting
Participating, yeah.
in the slaughter of their children. And it makes me so sick. So yeah, that is it's just a visceral issue for me. And it's just hard to stomach hearing AOC of all people lie about what Kamala Harris has been doing in regard to securing a ceasefire deal. And again, she didn't even need to make that lie. Again, Kamala Harris is the VP. She doesn't have that power. So how about just take that one line out of your speech?
Look, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think, again, I can't read AOC's heart or mind. My expectation would be, based on what we've heard her say about a lot of topics, I assume she cares deeply about what is happening there. And I assume, rightly or wrongly, she thinks she's pursuing a strategy that has the best chance of resolving the situation as fast as possible. I get what you're saying about the dishonesty, and she could be strategically wrong.
Like my money,
I hear what you're saying.
my money, however much it is, right, is going toward brutalizing the very people who helped my family.
Oh yeah, no, we
so
could not
sick.
agree more on this is a unique
And I'm
evil.
sorry. Like I wish I could do something about it. And I feel so powerless about it.
Yeah, there's a lot about politics that makes us feel powerless. God knows how much 11 months of watching historic levels of slaughter is about as powerless as you can feel. I mean, it reminds me, you remember like you joined TYT a long time ago in the aftermath of the invasion of Iraq. And so we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, all of this slaughter. Like slaughter that the media didn't really report on, even as much as they were reporting on in Gaza.
Yep.
I mean, you had hundreds of thousands of people being killed.
Yes.
And why was it important that we do that and just turn a blind eye and let hundreds of thousands of people be slaughtered? Because until we root out every single terrorist, we'll never be safe. So, if lots of people have to die, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. It's like that, but condensed down into such a short turnaround. The pace of civilian slaughter has never been matched in modern history. We are a barbaric people living in a time that is not nearly as peaceable as it should be. And there are any number of world conflicts that are absolutely devastating. And even in that context, we have somehow found a way to exceed ourselves in the depravity that some of us have perpetrated and others have participated in, and some people have stayed silent on. And a lot of people have really cared about and have tried to stop, but have been powerless to do so. And so I totally get the powerlessness that you feel.
Yeah, it's alienating. And like, look, I also understand the audience members who hear me say things like this, and they're scared. They don't want to hear any criticism of Democrats because they're scared about the possibility of another Trump administration.
Yeah.
And I empathize with that. I want you to understand, I empathize with that. But I'm just asking, especially now that I was vulnerable enough to share that family information with you guys, like, please empathize with me, right? When I'm engaging in these criticisms of the Democratic Party, it doesn't mean that I'm trying to uplift Trump. It means that I see that I have my own values, my own principles, and I see the behavior and the policies of the current Democratic administration as immoral and counter to what my values are. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I would say on top of that, like, it's not like I care about stopping Trump, but I also care about stopping the slaughter. No, if they can solve that and get a ceasefire, it materially increases the chance that they defeat Donald Trump. It's not one or the other, it's literally both, and possibly or neither. Because if Donald Trump does get in there, I mean, God only knows what's gonna happen. So to get it resolved as fast as possible, work tirelessly, whether you did or not before, do it now, and that will help you to win.
And I want to give Bernie credit because I believe that he hit the right tone and he had the precise, correct statement. Because the hostages need to come home.
Yeah.
Okay. So he didn't leave that out. And that is important to emphasize. But he also talked about the importance of a ceasefire in Gaza.
Yeah.
He hit the right tone and he said the right thing and he didn't lie to us. And I appreciate that. So round of applause to Bernie Sanders for doing that. Cenk Uygur is behind the camera right now. You didn't hear it, Cenk. You didn't hear it. But Bernie Sanders said we need to overturn Citizens United. Okay?
Get money out of politics in general.
Get money out of politics. He talked about corruption.
He talked about that's the only way to get all these other things he's talking about is the foundational issue of getting money out of politics.
He just said, thank God.
And then he rolled his eyes. I'm kidding. He didn't do it.
No, but it is like a critique that Cenk has had of Bernie. And he doesn't mention it in every speech. He's usually very hyper-focused on like Medicare for all.
Yeah.
But he does mention it time to time. And he did it tonight, which was very important.
Yeah, on the biggest stage that he'll have.
Yeah.